Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I'm going to be whining about Master Duel. Now, in the past, I've complained mightily on stream about Master Duel's terrible UI and the absolute dearth of content. They're missing a lot of cards, they have basically no cosmetics, most of the cosmetics they do have are locked behind time-gated events like the Fusion Festival or the Gold Pass. Which not only means it takes a long time to build your collection, but also means that anyone who happens to join after those events are over can just get fucked and never have access to those things, which is super dumb. So yeah, just in general, there's a lot of issues with the way the thing functions. But today I'm not really going to talk about any of that. Today I want to talk about the card game itself and where it kind of falls apart. Now, obviously, some of these criticisms also apply to the paper trading card game, but Master Duel has its own format, and I'm not playing the paper trading card game, so whatever. The first huge issue is the ban list. It's really behind. I would love it if they had an option to use the TCG ban list or use the OCG ban list or use legacy ban lists, especially in duel rooms, but those things are not options. I have no idea why those things are not options. It would not be hard to implement, but they are not. So while I can complain about not having ban list options available since the game is digital and we could totally have ban list options available, I will instead complain about the choices they have made with the ban list they have given us because it is absolute nonsense. So first of all, it was based more on the OCG ban list from like a year and a half ago when the game was programmed and the card pool was a lot thinner. You know, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! They release a new set every 3 months, so there have been several new sets since when this game's ban list was originally finalized. Most of those cards haven't been added to the game yet, but still, it's weird. And so there were certain things that a lot of TCG players were like, oh my god, I can't believe this shit is legal, like cards that enable Exodia and Max C. But quite frankly, those cards aren't good. Like, you're not doing anything interesting with a chicken game deck except Exodia. And so what? You'll get tired of playing Solitaire and making Exodia at some point, and you'll move on to an actually good deck. It doesn't matter. The novelty wears off. And Maxi doesn't matter because, one, there are several cards that counter it, from Called by the Grave to Droll and Lockbird to Ash Blossom. But also it's not good because it doesn't stop you from doing anything. Sure, your opponent gets cards, and like that can help them draw into hand traps or whatever, but like, who cares? If you can play through as many hand traps as your opponent draws, then it doesn't matter how many they draw. Just play a good deck and you don't have to worry about Max C. It's that simple. Heck, 90% of the time the only hand traps people are running is Max C and Ash Blossom, so you can play a bad deck that just summons a whole bunch and deck out your opponent. It doesn't matter. I have literally decked people out who played Max C against me when I was running 6 amps because you can infinitely summon with that deck. It's not good. It's a trash deck from like 20 years ago, but like, who cares? No, the bigger concern isn't shit like Maxi or Chicken Game, it's shit like Skill Drain, Vanities Emptiness, Imperial Order, all of which people are playing, all of which people are allowed to play at 3. Now, Master Duel has a generally different approach to floodgates, and there are lots of floodgates in the game, but not all floodgates are created equal. Cards like Zombie World or Macrocosmos are not shutting you out of the game completely. They can be a problem, right? They can create issues you have to work around, and they can reduce the effectiveness of your strategy, but they can't completely shut you out of the game. You know, like if you're playing some sort of tribal deck that needs all of your cards to be the same type, and then that type isn't zombie and you run into Zombie World, yeah, that sucks. It sucks. But you can still make most of your plays, right? Like you can still put cards on the field and you can still use the effects of cards that in hand and stuff. Like, it's fine-ish. It hurts, but it doesn't completely ruin you usually. But what are you supposed to do against Vanity's Emptiness? Like, if you don't have a removal spell in hand when it's flipped, you just don't get to play the game anymore. There are no decks that function off of 1 normal summon and 0 special summons. And any deck that you can think of that does that is not competitively viable at all. And it's a trap card, so you can flip it up on your opponent's turn after you've special summoned 30 times and create a one-sided effect where they have to play through a huge board with no ability to special summon. That's awful. That's unfair. It's uninteractive. It's shitty. And this is without even talking about the decks that are built to search floodgates, like Masterpiece. Well, sorry, Masterpiece is banned, but like his archetype. And also the Eldritch archetype. And also Trap Tricks. When you have multiple kinds of decks that are built around searching floodgates and making the game non-interactive and cutting your opponent out from the ability to play, that's just not a fun way for a card game to exist. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every card that limits interaction is inherently unfun and should be banned. Some of them are more fair than others. I already brought up that some floodgates don't completely shut you out, but also, like, there's a Destiny hero monster that is literally skill drain plus relinquished on legs. And that card is more fair than skill drain because it requires 3 hero monsters. And it's a monster, so you can run over it in combat or use a kaiju or anything. Heck, you can turn off its ability with your own skill drain. And also it requires setup, right? It takes 3 monsters to make it, and you really only want to make it when your opponent already has a monster on the board because it has 1900 attack on its own, so you need the relinquish effect to make it stay alive from an attack. That makes it a lot more fair. There's more counterplay options, it's harder to get on the field. Sure, it's searchable in its archetype, but you have to play the archetype pure to do that. So, having a boss monster that shuts off your opponent's board and it's archetype specific, that's fine. That's not as big a deal as a trap card anyone can play at any time for free. There are other cards that should probably be hit along these lines besides just trap floodgates. For example, Herald of Ultimateness. Now, you could leave Herald if you crippled the deck in other ways, but I think just hitting Herald is the best way to do it because it's just so busted. In theory, Herald of Ultimateness has a balanced effect because you have to discard a card every time you want to use its negate. But it's not a hard once per turn, and the deck can fill its hand with the required cards very easily. And some of them can even turn into extra cards after you discard them. So it just doesn't matter. Like, they have infinite negates. And if your opponent can set up 7 negates and you only have 5 fucking cards to play, then you can't play the game. All of which is why Drytron has remained the best deck in this fucking game. Now, again, there are other ways you could hit that deck besides hitting Herald of Ultimateness. In the TCG, they got rid of Ben 10, and they got rid of one of the cards that floods the hand, so it's just harder to get to Herald, and there's less payoff for it. But as it is, it's kind of busted. And then there's the new Despia cards. There's a Despia monster that they can summon 3 of in a single turn, and it just tears through your life points every time you activate an effect, which you have to activate multiple effects in order to set up a board that is able to remove them. So again, it's just kind of punishing players for interacting or playing the game at all, and that's not fun. Now again, it's normally not as big a deal when it's on a big monster because it takes setup, there's more counterplay options, but with Despia they kind of get around that because 1, they don't have to set up at all. You can fusion summon that monster from 1 card in hand, it doesn't matter. And 2, the monsters recycle themselves, so even if you deal with them, you haven't dealt with them, they come back. And that's super unfair. And also, other monsters come back in their place. There's just a huge flood of things you have to deal with, and you're not allowed to activate effects in order to do it. It's just bad. It's bad on every level. And of course, this is the only deck that people are playing in the Fusion event right now, which is so fun. There are a few other kind of annoying cards that are at the centerpiece of big combo decks. Block Dragon decks are really annoying. However, there is some counterplay for Block Dragon. You can called by it, you can droll it, whatever. But it does create a deck that just has way too much fucking material to work with and can do whatever it wants. And it's kind of annoying. And the Tri-Brigade monsters, there could probably be a couple of hits or effect adjustments there too. Jesus. I mean, I don't know what is the important card to hit in that deck because all of their cards individually are just okay, but they all search and they all get new cards and they all let you link summon more, and like it just fucking it. The turns just last so long. So long. I mean, nothing on that in that deck got hit really, but I think most of the people who were playing it switched to Sword Soul because it's the better version of that. But honestly, Sword Soul turns are much shorter and their end boards aren't that crazy. It's okay to play through. It's whatever. You know, I've actually seen Sword Soul players go through like most of their combo and end on like 2 monsters and then surrender the next turn when I start setting up a board. So I'm not super worried about Sword Soul, but it'll probably deserve a hit sooner or later. All of this is widely known by everyone who plays the game and widely acknowledged by everyone who talks about the game. And Konami decided that the thing they should do for their ban list is limit one of the Adamancipator tuners that isn't even really the best tuner. And also the Block Dragon deck doesn't really care about losing one of their tuners. Like why? And that's fucking it. They basically hit nothing on that list. Like it's so bad. It's so fucking bad. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. MBT made a video about it. DZeef made a video about it. It is one of the worst ban lists anyone has ever seen. It's so shitty. It's such a fundamental failure to address like the problems with the game. There were a lot of people complaining about running into bot decks that were just farming gems by doing automated processes like the Banquet of Millions or whatever. And that's annoying, but I personally didn't really run into it that much. I only played against it like twice, so eh. There are also quite a few dumb FTKs available on the list. I made a video about a Cyberstein FTK a little while ago, but there's a few others. I haven't really run into any of them repeatedly, but they just shouldn't exist. FTKs are dumb and shouldn't exist. Like, I know Exodia is technically an FTK, and that exists, and I said it doesn't matter because the novelty wears off, and it does. But Exodia is a little bit different. You know, people are always kind of like, oh, cool, this thing's coming out for once. Like, I don't mind if I lost to Exodia. It's kind of fun. But I mean, if you don't like Exodia FTKs, you can always just ban Exodia. And, like, that's it. That's all you have to do. You could. Like, Konami could ban it if they felt like it was a problem. It's already got the word forbidden in its name. It can be on the forbidden list. I'm not advocating for that, by the way. I actually think Exodia, all the pieces should be at 3 because it's so dumb that they're limited, but whatever. I mean, you wouldn't play more than one of each in a dedicated win by drawing it deck anyway. The only time you would play more than one of each is if you were trying to build Exodius, which is a bad card, so who cares? Or Exodia Necro, whatever the fuck it is. Like, those cards suck. They suck so bad. They might suck less if they could have more material, but they still suck. So yeah, I think the ban list could use an overhaul. There's a lot of shitty, annoying floodgates. There's a lot of really excessively long combo decks, and they're not doing anything to address it. They're not taking a look at the boss monsters that these decks aim to make. They're not dealing with FTKs. They're not dealing with floodgates. They're just hoping that all of these shitty things will balance each other out somehow, and they don't. They don't. So yeah. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have like no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it, so oh well. Okay, thanks, bye!